welcome to today's edition of Mountain Echoes live on Dmrtv. Dmrtv coming your way from the capital of the southwest region here in Buea, Cameroon, this evening with me, JUDE MBAKU. And like you know, every edition of Mountain Echoes, we bring to you topical issues and put them on the table for us to have a debate, have a chat, have a conversation around them, to see how we can reshape communities, how we can reshape societies, how we can refine the mindsets of those who watch our programs. So today is going to be another edition. Today is going to be unique because we are going to be having a one-on-one with a fine scholar, a doctor in peace, security, governance, and development issues. He's equally a researcher who has worked over the years with most renowned international organizations and agencies, especially the United Nations. Currently, he works as the regional coordinator, the regional director of okay. We're coming in a very short while to give you a full profile of our guest today. We just want you to have relax a bit, to have your seat, relax a bit, to understand what we are going to be talking as far as the topic today is concerned: peace, security, governance, and development issues. So let me quickly just turn to our guest tonight, Dr. Daniel Ekongwe, who is already joining us in the studio this evening. Doctor, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for accepting our invitation.
Yeah, it's an honor and privilege to be with you today.
We just couldn't have missed this opportunity having you now that you're around and here in Buea. We think it is an honor for us to have you. Now, I was struggling there to give a brief of who you are.
Okay.
I may not have gotten it right because of the large profile I find, from being a researcher to an academic done in your field, which is peace, security, governance, development issues. Yes. How do you really describe yourself? Who is Professor Daniel Ekongwe?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mbaku. I think editor-in-chief of this media house. And thank you for this opportunity. I was with you yesterday, and this morning we are together, in your program.
Right.
I was saying that it's the first of my acceptance to do a TV interview, because I'm always a bit reticent with the too much political content or context that interviews are done in some of our media houses. But I trust in your professional approach to these things, and I hope we get on well.
Right.
So I am Daniel Ekongwe. I am the Inspector General in charge of international cooperation, academics, and publication at the General Secretariat, International Office of the Pan-African Institute for Development. Before that, I'm Emeritus Regional Director for West Africa of Pedwa Buea.
Okay.
Yeah, and I am Associate Professor with the United Nations University for Peace, Africa Program, in peace, governance, security, and development.
So generally, I was looking at you from what you have. In fact, you've upgraded your profile has catapulted within a short time.
Oh yeah.
Yes, it is, because from what we had in a very short while, it will appear everything is going on very, very fast for you as far as this is concerned. What was your part? Why did you have to choose this particular area of peace, security, governance, and development?
I think it's all about orientation and observation. I read law in Yaoundé University, and while we were inspired by some of our professors, principally the late Professor Bibun Wum, who just passed away, and even the current Prime Minister of the Republic of Cameroon, Chief Dr. John Gute, and Professor Ephraim Guafo. In fact, a host of all of them, Professor Joseph Ewona, Josh Ngango. But in my area of specialization, I've been influenced by principally two persons. The first has been the venerated diplomat of Cameroonian descent, Mr. or His Excellency Etekim Boma. Etekim Boma was a former Secretary General of the Organization of African Unity.
Okay.
Yes, he was the very first, and then from the international scene, a very controversial figure. But then he principally, while I studied in Europe and traveled the world, is his work that principally influenced me. That's the late Secretary of State of the United States of America, Henry Kissinger, Dr. Henry Kissinger. That's my principal personality in terms of understanding the working, the mechanics of the international system. And while I read law and moved to study political sociology and international relations, the person of Ekongwe Mbaki rang in my mind.
Okay.
And the works of Henry Kissinger influenced my thinking. And that's how, while studying for my PhD at the University of Dmrtv in Leicester, I came across the concept of world order.
World order. And you're a scholar in that
That's my area.
We are going to explore.
Yes. And generally in this field, Dr. Henry Kissinger is considered the father of this concept, if we want to call it, or this practice, or the understanding in terms of the conceptual application of what we mean by world order. You know, so I have moved from law to political sociology to international relations and diplomacy to historical study.
Has it been a very easy move?
It's not been easy one way, and it has been easy in another way. It has not been easy because of the hard work and long hours that you have to put in studying to achieve my objectives. And it has been easy because after hard work, you are able to find things a lot easy in terms of its application.
Right.
Yes. So that's my guide. Like I was talking to the students who were graduating yesterday, that it's about resilience, belief, and a greater vision.
Doctor, there's a moment, especially for us in this part of the world.
Yes.
Our school system made it in a way that we believe when you cross so many professional areas,
Yes.
you sometimes get lost. You are talking about law, you're talking about history.
Yes.
You had a doctor in history.
Yes.
You're talking about diplomacy,
Yes.
international relations, and all that.
Yes.
But for us, it's difficult to find your feet somewhere. If you were to describe yourself at the moment,
Yes.
what will you say you are? What is your direct?
What is my focus?
What is your focus?
What is my focus?
Yes. And will you advise people,
Yes.
young scholars, students, to
Yes.
also pick a path like yours,
Yes.
digressing from one professional field to another?
Yes.
Is it that easy?
I said it is easy. Let me make a little allusion. When you are hungry, you eat to feed your stomach and stop the hunger. In knowledge, in education, in academics, in developing your expertise, or to be knowledgeable, you feed your mind. What I mean is that you've used the word process. Process means it's an ongoing activity. So by the time you get to the university, you begin to find a path of who you want to become, of who you want to be remembered for, or who you want to look like. We are in the Catholic ecumenical service. Most of your fathers, they have an inspirational idol. They want to look like Jesus Christ.
Right.
As an academic, I want to look as the leading scholar in my area of study, like I've said, Ekongwe Mbaki and Dr. Henry Kissinger in the area of world order, which generally will be diplomacy and international relations. To come back to your question or worry, is academics is a multidisciplinary activity. The orthodoxy of the educational system in Africa, as propagated by the pioneers, I don't want to call, say, Europeans, because they worked together with Africans to develop this in the 1960s after independence. It was principally a unique approach, you know, a unilateral approach to academics, a kind of unique disciplinary approach. You know, you have to read history, you have to go with mathematics, you have to go with economics. But when you get higher in the academia, you find that it is multidisciplinary.
Right.
The theories they can be used to explain one concept or the other. Yeah, I'll give you an example. In international relations, there is the current use of the theory of what we call the game theory. The game theory has its origin in mathematics, meaning to anticipate action. And that's the application of international relations today, or the use of diplomacy. Because most governments, actors, or institutions, in taking actions, would want to anticipate the course of action of the other person. So you see a mathematical theory being used in international relations.
Yes.
So that's why you have to read, have a mastery, whether it's history, economics, and so forth, in order to understand the application of all of these concepts.
Do you see our Africa? Let me just come back to us here.
Yes.
Because Pedwa, where you work, is
Yes.
Is here in
Yes.
Boya.
Yes.
Do you see our universities? Are you
Yes.
talking about university?
Yes.
Do you see them opening up with that kind of extensive thinking and study?
Oh yes, they are. They are. They are. There's been a tremendous effort. There's been a tremendous effort from African governments and African scholars, you know, to meet up, to match the gap, you know, of standards in higher education. You know, recently, I'll give a Cameroonian example. Recently, there's been a presidential decree reclassifying universities in Cameroon, or higher education. So you have 4 types of universities in Cameroon. You have state universities, public universities, international universities, and foreign universities. All of these, I'm sure the presidency or the government and the Ministry of Higher Education must have studied, must have researched into the changing dynamics in higher education. You know, and to come directly to what you were saying, take for instance the Pan-African Institute for Development. You know, that's expertise in development. But there's no aspect of human endeavor that hasn't got a link or niche with development.
True.
The Catholic University Institute. You had me yesterday as a guest speaker.
Yes.
And what did I say? That you took on a niche after having studied the activities of other universities, and you called yours the Entrepreneurial University. Pan-African Institute for Development is an institution for development.
Right.
The Catholic University is an institution for entrepreneurial development. ERIC is an institution for the study of international relations.
Right.
CHU is public health, specialization. But it does not mean that within the curriculum or within the background of the different programs, you do not have other areas of study. But they all are coached to link up together, so that in order to be an expert, or in order to develop a proper expertise in these particular fields, you are able to develop your thought and have an understanding of the working mechanics of the different areas.
Right.
That's what it is. So to be a diplomat, to be an internationalist, you must have a mastery of history, world history, African history, or international history, or economic history, or political history. And you are trained through your undergraduate and graduate programs right up to your specialization. But within that context, you also have to study other courses,
so that they help you to
to shape your mind, to expand your knowledge, your horizon.
Right.
And then as you grow up higher, you begin to slimline and focus. And so I would say that, or if I say I am an expert in world order, is because that is the niche.
Okay.
That's where I have settled. It deals with peace, it deals with governance, it deals with security. and it deals with development.
All right. So
Yes.
let's come now into that discussion,
Yes.
so that we can really hit what we are talking about today. We are going to
Yes.
come back at the end to look at some of those achievements as a Cameroonian. It's not
Okay.
common to find those of you up there. So we are going to come back to see those achievements you've had so far,
Yes.
and the articles. You are a researcher.
Yes.
The articles you've written. But let us look a bit at the topic we have. We are trying to size up the peace, security, governance, development
And
issues,
development issues, yes.
within the African continent as a whole.
Yes.
And if need be, to Cameroon, why not? And then we look at maybe from your own academic and philosophical mindset,
Yes.
what you really have as far as this is concerned. So maybe you want to first of all tell us. Let's start with peace,
Yes.
because peace is a very delicate aspect. Peace
Yes.
to you. We are in a very turbulent era in Africa,
Yes.
and people still think that there is peace. How can you really size up the peace level within the continent at the moment?
Okay. I don't know how you came about this this topic of today, but I think it is current, and it's also a worrying period for Africa and even the world. You know, we find conflicts and wars of identity and fragmentation of states across the continent of Africa. We find wars in Europe, you know, the Russia-Ukraine war. And we have just, you know, been caught up with the Israeli-Hamas fracas.
Right.
There, in the other side, in East and Western Asia, you have the threat of war, China invading Taiwan. But those are all, you know, talks in the corridors. If you go to Latin America, you'll find issues of political turbulence in Venezuela. You know, if you go to India and Pakistan, Bangladesh, in that area, you would find turbulence, political turbulence in Pakistan, the issue of the former Prime Minister, Khan, who has been taken to court. So to come back to what you were saying, the concept of peace is simply one of political stability in a country or in the region, in the continent or in the world. What accounts for peace in a country, what accounts for political stability in a country, you know, comes from one instrument developed by the then UN Security Secretary General Boutros Ghali, you know, which is called the Agenda for Peace. In 1992, the Agenda for Peace, that there are certain preconceived conditions that must be met, and that if met, there will be peace and stability in a country or region, you know. And this concept talks about negative peace and positive peace, you know. Positive peace is simply do these things and there will be stability in your country. To go by the text of Boutros Ghali, you know, develop agriculture, develop transport infrastructure, develop public health sector, develop educational facilities, you know, provide opportunities for youthful employment, you know, get involved into training and operation, or looking at parliamentary action, what laws come out from the parliament that can galvanize government action or government agenda. If these things are done in any country, you know, is going to prevent the escalation of conflicts, you know. So, but then it is not as easy as we say it.
Right.
Government action or the understanding the functionality or the machinery of government is not as easy as we say it. You know, I have often spoken whether to students or some heads of states have had the privilege to give counsel, or some ministers have had the opportunity to discuss with, that I now understand the mechanics of governance. I now understand the working mechanism of a state infrastructure. But as a student in my university days, I would criticize these things. But I have traveled 5 continents.
Right.
I've moved across cultures. I have read and continue to read, and I understand these things are not as easy as we teach. The practicality of these things, it's different.
I guess that is why you took now interest in understanding the world order.
That's what got me there. We are coming to that.
Right.
You get me? But above all, in terms of practice, I have managed an institution, you know, at the international level, and I have seen managing people, what it takes. And I begin to imagine from a very micro level, say from our parents managing the home, or us as parents managing the homes, going to quarter heads managing the communities,
yes.
going to state level, the governor managing a region, and then climbing up to a minister running a ministerial department, and then coming to the head of state. I'll give you an example. Back in 2016, I was privileged to give counsel to the governor of Plateau State, who had just been thrown into this process. And I think I've written a book about that. You can see that online.
Plateau State in Nigeria?
Yes, Plateau State in Nigeria,
Okay.
yes. I was giving counsel to the governor there, Barrister Lalung. And this is what I explained, that while we may focus on youth employment, there's another dimension. So it's all about the priority of the state. That's looked at from a global or macro dimension of what we call the national security strategy of a country. And much of these things, if you are either a lecturer, professor, or a minister, and you are not aware of these things, the application becomes a problem. In the Cameroonian context, I was very impressed back in 2019 when the then Minister Mutase was receiving his staff. Minepart, at that time, was Minister of the Economy Planning, Regional Planning. And in December, they have this general evaluation meeting in Yaoundé, where they come from all the 10 regions. And that's the first time I saw a Cameroon minister address his ministry from every single department without reading
From the papers.
from a paper. I had the document because I was director of cabinet to the Secretary General of the Pan-African Institute for Development. And Minepart is the titular authority of the Pan-African Institute for Development in Cameroon as one. You have MINISUP as well, and Ministry of External Relations.
Okay.
And so we were there. I got very impressed. Because I saw intelligence, I saw a mastery of his work. And when I took that document became one of my working instruments when I am giving lectures at the African University Institute of Social Science in SWA. That's my reference paper in terms of political governance and development. The white paper produced by Minepart, where you see domestic issues as well as cooperation through international protocols. And I began to say, yes, if we have persons who have a mastery of things like this, not in the classroom, but he's talking to his staff, to his personnel, to his subordinates, to his collaborators.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. So that's a Cameroonian context, like I was talking of the Nigerian context. It's also the same. I've had to work with the president of Somalia, actually in running through his PhD with the regional director for United Nations University for Peace, Professor Kale. And you see the practical application of knowledge,
Right.
which will not necessarily be appreciated by everyone, because that's what politics is all about, conflicts of ideas. And so while you are pushing this agenda and thinking this is good for the state, there is another dimension, maybe opposition parties or different points of view or perspectives, and they're thinking you are not going the right way. What is the consequence of all of that? At this mature age, that's what I was telling you out there. I don't do politics. I don't talk it. I don't get involved in it. I may vote.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, to criticize government, I don't do it anymore.
Because
I now understand what it takes.
Mm.
I don't do it anymore. If I find a president who has stayed there for too long and has managed to hold his society together in peace, good and fine.
Okay.
Good and fine. It means something is done. Because once that peace fractures,
okay.
it becomes difficult to bring it back. So what we do in terms of advising African states or different organizations or persons is to try and explain, to see the status quo. Are you meeting the needs of your society in providing food, security, health, and shelter? That's the principal responsibility of every civilization, of every government.
Okay.
Once a government fails to do that, it's failed state.
Mm-hmm. No, when it fails to do that, we should call it positive peace according to
yes.
Brutus
Gali, yes.
Yes, like you are saying. When you fail that now, you plunge the country maybe into chaos.
Yes, when you fail to implement these points that were enumerated by Brutus Gali in his 1992 book, The Agenda for Peace, you provide transport infrastructure, education, health, agriculture, I mean opportunities for which can stabilize, provide opportunities to your country. It will lead to scarcity, it will lead to conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And the criticism will start. But then, like I said, the government has to prioritize which of this agenda to push forward.
At what time?
Through the budget system, with the workings of the parliament, and see, okay, maybe we give more, we have to say during peacetime and during war times.
Okay.
So during peacetime, we give priority to what? And during wartime, we give priority to what? I was watching a documentary the other day, and because of the war in Russia and Ukraine, they say, well, the Putin government has transformed already the government from peacetime economy to war economy.
Okay.
Yes, that's how it works. And so, meaning the government will give priority to certain things that allude to a war scenario.
Yes.
But it has an economic. There's an economic evaluation of how the system will work. In peacetime, you would focus on education, health, agriculture, transport infrastructure, and all of this. International cooperation, bringing investors, organize elections. In wartime, you can organize elections. In wartime, you will be looking to secure the country. The territorial integrity of the state.
So you might pump in more.
You pump in more money in for security and the Ministry of Defense. That's what it is.
Right.
But even at peacetime, most governments also pump in more money into the defense budget, because at all times the responsibility of the state is to protect the territorial integrity of the state.
And until you know these things, you
will keep blaming the government and saying, but no, they should put more money here. We say, well, you have to put more money in education, in public health, and so forth. Yes, but your topic for today, you've said current process.
Right.
It's a process. It takes time, step by step approach. Most African governments and across the world before had the development approach of 5-year development plan. Some governments still do that. In 5 years, we plan to achieve this. We plan to focus on this project, on this sector. Evaluation after 5 years. Where are we? We now refocus or reorientate to another dimension. Cameroon did like that up till about 1975. During the IJU days. It was all 5-year development plan.
Which had an evaluation.
Had an evaluation process. But, the development process of the world has gained more sophistry. It's become more sophisticated, multi-dimensional, and more complex. And even the weight of international cooperation and the influence of the bigger states complicates things even the more.
That influence has caused us, I don't know, for many, especially those who are Pan-Africanists, they'll say the influence has caused Africa a lot as far as peace is concerned. There's a school of thought that still feels that it is because of this lack of basic amenities, like you put, by African states, authorities, the president, the head of state, and all that is causing the unrest in Africa. Like we just had some coups. In fact, we've had a couple of coups within the last 3 years or so in Africa.
Yes.
Is the blame still on Africa or the West? Pan-Africanists always want to look at the peace or the unrest in Africa and blame on the West.
Yes.
Do you have that same?
Well, I'm a Pan-Africanist.
Okay.
And that's why I enjoy working with the Pan-African Institute for Development.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and the stage at which we are in Africa is what we call the age of Renaissance. You know, a rebirth of Pan-Africanism. You know, not a reconceptualization, but a reincarnation of those principles. And you find that even the agenda of the African Union is moving in that direction, to say that, you know, the politics of Africa should be for Africa. And in most of my discourse, in most of my lectures, in most of my advice that I would give to statesmen and other persons, I have a mantra: Africa must develop by methods of its own. That's Pan-Africanism. Africa must develop by methods of its own, and Africa can develop by methods of its own. I'll give you a simple example. There is an explosion of the African fabric industry. There is an explosion of the African cultural landscape in terms of music, food, drama, cinematography. There's an explosion of these aspects of the African society, and its influence and has influence in the world. An example, I go back to your word process. In the past, much of the music we listen to or dance to were foreign music. You know, we were dancing all sorts of music from the Western world, and you know, today it's all about these songs produced by our African children, inspired by people like Fela Ransom Kuti. You know, what do they call it? Afro
hip hop.
Afro hip hop or something like that. And you have a new generation of all these guys, P Square, Mr. Leo, Silas, Salatiel, and all of
Renyo,
and all of these people.
Mola Mogombe.
These are explosion of the African context of the musical industry.
Right.
The industry is expanding. So when we talk about Pan-Africanism, it is not some abstract concept. No. It is a practicality of African culture, using African culture to meet the needs of the African people. Today, African dishes have gone international. You hear quite often on the media, the competition between the Nigerian jollof and the Cameroonian jollof, or the Senegalese jollof, or the Ghanaian jollof. And you go to London today, in the streets of London, you have restaurants of international standards who have within their menu African jollof. The Cameroonian dishes have gone international, whether it's Ero, whether it's the yellow soup achu, or in French you call it taro. It's gone across the borders. African fabric, in as much as me and you are putting on a British suit,
yes.
But then you see in most of our occasions we now go in our fully traditional dresses. The market of the African fabric has exploded. And you see African governments taking to that when they're going for the Olympics. They dress in the traditional African attire to showcase all of this. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So these are the aspects we are talking. So also, if we extend to other sectors, agriculture, because there are African means, there are African models of agriculture. There are. We can use scientific knowledge to apply and develop them.
That's true.
There are African medicinal or health plants.
Yes.
The causes and impact of COVID-19 has led to the explosion of the African traditional practitioner industry. Because while in the general context, it was general talk of, oh, Africa, they will see corpses in the streets. This COVID is going to kill us and finish the continent.
But
then the irony, that is what they call the Sophoclean irony.
Right.
It's Sophoclean, because what you expected is not what happened. If wherever that disease might have come from, and they thought, well, Africa was the target, it didn't produce that result. We were advised that even our African nutrition nutritive value, is the cause of our survival. And people got into scientific research and realized that our nutritive values has built our immune system because of the alkaline levels of our food intake. And so we do not fall prey to much of this COVID disease. That also, we know of the production of the Catholic bishop in Douala.
Archbishop Samuel Cleda.
Archbishop Samuel Cleda, what he produced.
Yes.
Effective, at least from some of the reports that we read. Other traditional practitioners, we saw how other countries, African countries, applied all of this. And me and you, we are standing. But the impact across the world was devastating. So I'm saying that in terms of the application of Pan-Africanism, we take this in this area of the African traditional practitioner and see how it can be scientifically developed and supported by the state. The Cameroon government is doing a lot of that. The Tanzanian government is doing a lot of that. Nigeria and other, Ghana and so forth, to give institutional support so that all of these things, can develop into a broad market, provide employment. But above all, it gives a sense of achievement to those who have been in this practice for several decades and were not recognized.
From Africa.
Yes.
And that's why some people still think that Africa should have a health.
It should have an autonomous pharmaceutical industry.
Yes.
We are getting there.
So that they can produce their own. When things like this happen, it can really help to bridge the tension between the West and Africa.
It's a process.
It's a process.
It's not going to bridge the tension because you have used the West and Africa. The West is not happy about Africa developed by the methods of their own. Because human nature or interstate relations is all about taking from you what you have to use for myself. Each state, like we started by saying, national security strategy. Each state wants to develop its interests. Each state wants to meet the needs of its population, provide food, health, security, and safety. They need resources. And some states do not have enough of these resources. So they have to go into partnership, cooperation agreements with other states in order to buy or take by force or grab. That's explained within the context of world order, what they call hegemonism. You get me?
Right.
And there's also an explanation to say that there are bigger states and there are smaller states. And when the bigger states tell or inform or instruct or request that the smaller states do something in terms of policy and they do not do it, there will be consequences.
Penalized. Now
it's not penalties, there will be consequences.
Okay, penalties will be now that...
yes, I mean, you're holding responsible. In a fair game, you do not have much of a chance.
Yes.
And with that hegemonism, what is it? It's this lady Barbara Minton developed it in 3 steps. They will create a problem, publicize a problem, and come up with a solution for the problem. That's what will happen.
Doctor, what's the link between the peace we have and development? We're looking at peace and development as being holistic.
Yes.
Where is the link? There are states, the school of thought that still feel that the West, you're talking about Russia.
Yes.
Russia is at war.
Yes.
But it's still developed.
Yes.
If they are looking at countries around the world, developed nations, are not say Russia is a third world country because it's been in war over these years.
Yes.
Israel, Palestine, they are actually devastating themselves now.
Yes.
But they are still developed.
But figures shows that the economy is still expanding.
So what is wrong with Africa? Go to our own African countries.
Yes.
When there is war, there is total underdevelopment. We have a classical case of the DRC Congo. We have cases of Chad and many other countries.
Yes.
What is wrong with Africa? In as much as you might want to say, okay, support the Pan-Africanism mindset.
Yes.
But there is a problem between there's a problem with our development strategy in Africa.
Yes.
Which we are yet to reconcile.
Yes.
Is there a problem with us?
Well, I don't want to use the word problem sometimes because it's a very it's
very hard.
It's hard. It can be a dangerous word to talk of problems. You know, there are issues.
Okay.
There are issues to be dealt with, and each state develops institutionally. Each state will develop its institutions to implement its policies. So at independence, African governments develop different institutions, political institutions, economic institutions, cultural institutions, you know, expressed through ministerial departments. And then the worth of a country is measured by the resources that are found within the territorial limits of that state. You get it? Now, in order to provide this, I want to say, elementary things of food, health, shelter, and security, the government has to be able to transform these resources in order to provide for its citizens through domestic means and international cooperation means, or through means of international cooperation. Now, you must have heard about the word industrialization, you know, because it takes, you know, the industrial capacity to transform some of these resources. Else, we would remain in the rudimentary state of just, you know, harvesting, and it would not being able to transform these resources. Now, the industrial complex through technology has not been one of the strengths of Africa. You understand? This has been principally dominated by the Western world today, China and other parts of the world. And development, which means the transformation of these resources, using our natural resources to satisfy our needs by use of technology and other means. In some aspects, African governments have been able to do. But in much of what we would expect is still in process. So to come to your question, to link it between peace and development, would say that while we are having instability in many African countries, is because of the lack of our ability to transform these processes,
to develop them,
to meet the needs of our population. And so therefore there is want, there is need, there is scarcity, and then there's the politics of criticizing the government's apparent inaction. Now, it does not mean that in the Western world or in the other parts of the world they do not face similar challenges. If you go to America, you have a very serious internal problem of providing shelter to the citizens of that country. You are aware of the outstanding achievement of former President Obama in providing a universal health care system for the Americans. Before, it did not exist. And you ask yourself, but a developed country, as they call themselves, and if you do not have medical insurance, it is difficult to go to the hospital and be attended to. In England, you have the NHS, the National Health Service. That's more like the systems we have in African countries, but they have more sophisticated machinery and health instruments that can be used to provide health to their citizens. If you come to, it's good we talk about these things with practical examples. I always come to the word you use, process. Today, for instance, in Cameroon, you have 10 regional hospitals. Let's talk from that perspective. And each regional hospital is at least trying to meet up with the need of providing MRI scan machines or medical equipment of the highest standard. And bit by bit, the government is getting to that gap. But first, the infrastructures at the regional levels, the 10 regions, they all have.
Right.
And government effort is towards that dimension in order to meet this need, and also provide that we should be able to get to a point where at least there will be one doctor per 30 citizens. That's why queues exist for training of medical personnel and those that are going abroad to study. That's why different medical institutions like Boya University open a department for public health.
Yes.
And the government has also liberalized the private universities and medical services, and I think they have a system of monitoring and evaluation, because else it's going to be anarchy and chaos and things like that. You know, there's no perfect society. But then we've maintained the momentum in the process, step by step, and that to say, okay, in these first 5 years, what has been done? In the next 10 years, where do we want to be? In the next 20 years, globally, what have we achieved in terms of providing public health to the population? So if last year, or if as of last year, we have 10 regional hospitals, so in the next 5 years, just 10 regions should be able to have divisional hospitals that reach a certain standard.
Yes, because if you have achieved from one,
if you've achieved from one, you get it. You go to the next. You go to the next target.
Effect. Yes.
You know, and through that gradual process and with time, you have a target and you meet that target. It is also the same in education. In the early years after independence, how many people were able to have acquired education? You could count them by the fingers of your hand. Today, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of graduates. And you're saying, but where is the employment? Well, some countries have increased the number of universities in order to allow their citizens to acquire knowledge at the university level. And then to develop the different institutions of the state so that they're able to provide opportunities for employment. But the state cannot employ everybody.
True.
The private sector has to develop. When the private sector develops and there is stability in the country, that link between peace and development will be fulfilled. Not to perfection, but at least to meet a certain threshold. That will depend on how ministerial departments are created, and how they collaborate between one another, and how they implement their policies in order to meet the needs of the state.
And all this comes back to again to the issue of governance.
It comes to governance. Because what is governance? Governance is having authority or the power to implement these things.
Yes.
Using the resources available. Those resources is not a monopoly of the state. I just spoke of the private sector. So the private sector should be in partnership with the government. The government should be in partnership with the private sector and the diaspora and the international community, because no state is an island. And then come up with an agenda that falls within what we call the national security strategy in terms of peace and security studies and governance, and then implement them. There can be an issue.
Right.
I'll give an example. In the 1990s, that due to cooperation with international organizations and foreign partners, you know, most African governments were proposed the structural adjustment program. And the dynamics or operational mechanics of this system, we know what happened. You know, it led most African governments into difficulties. But then some governments did not have a choice because of what I said before, the principle of hegemonism. If they have, if they are bigger states and they impose on you that you have to go by these rules,
you just have to go by it. All right, Doctor. So, in fact, your ideas, your philosophies, your educational background, and all that is helping to reshape our discussion these days. Let's go to an area where you are very much known for. You're a scholar in this whole world order.
Yes.
For those of us who are watching, many people who are watching for the first time, it's abstract to them. It's in world order.
Yes.
They really not even understand what it means.
What it means,
because
yes.
the whole issue of peace, the security, we're talking about security from one country, Russia, Ukraine, it's about what other big nations think.
Yes.
The peace of Africa determined by Europe. The development of this area depends on this and that.
Yes.
I think that is the web where the idea of world order, people calling the shots here and there is concerned.
In all simplicity, that's what it is.
Yes. So maybe go again into an insight of war order.
Yeah.
How is the war at this level as far as war order is
Yes, the
concerned?
thing is that when we talk of world order, we're simply talking about the interconnectedness of the states of the world. Unprecedented interconnectedness between the states of the world, people of the world, cultures of the world, histories of the world, economics of the world. The present way, way in which the world operates, or the present relationship between states, was a European creation. Back, if you go back to history, back in 1648, what we call the Westphalian Treaty, peace treaty in Onasbruck in Germany. After 100 years of war, between themselves, the Europeans, they decided to come together and sit and say, we better stop this war, no more war. And they created 3 principles, principles of sovereignty, respect the sovereignty of each independent state, the autonomy and the independence of each state. And they sat there, them Europeans, and developed these concepts, these principles. And then later invited other members, and other countries began to join in and follow these principles. And fast forward, after the process of colonization, these principles were exported to the other parts of the world. Right. And that is how the current nomenclature of a state was developed. Each country has its territorial integrity and boundaries, and the other country must respect that territorial integrity, And now, some rules were developed to guide this relationship between independent states, principles. So in very simple terms, world order simply means the operationality of this world system as guided by those rules. You get it? Right. Like when you go to United Nations and you're saying that, well, take for instance Mali. Mali has said the French people, we no longer want you people in our country. Burkina Faso says the same. Niger says the same. They are simply saying that respect our sovereignty and the autonomy of our country. We no longer want it in our country. So this interconnectedness between states in terms of economics, in terms of history, in terms of culture, in terms of politics, in terms of the military, security, should operate according to laid down rules. It's a system, it's a global system that you may call the world system, or what generally has been called international relations.
Well, laid down rules by who?
It was laid down by Europeans. It doesn't mean that other rules were not existing, or it doesn't mean that others in the other parts of the world, there were no interstate relations. Before the Europeans came to Africa, there were empires.
Right.
There were nations ruled by kings and queens and princes with power and authority and prestige and honor. But we are saying this current modern system of how the world operates was a European creation. Merging the cultures and rules and principles of other civilizations with the Western civilization, put together, refined, and then sold to the world. But then it's a master and servant relationship, because those who are, or it's a, to use the word, it's a game where there are rules, and there are people who implement the rules, and there are some people who may not respect these rules. Putin has always asked the question: America invaded Iraq. Were they condemned at the United Nations?
Saddam Hussein was even removed and shot to death.
The images
were aired. Yes. I remember when I was...
So those situations. Apartheid existed in South Africa for too long. That's another example. Or take the economic concept. The current narrative, the current debate on the need for national currencies of 14 French-speaking countries, being tied to the French franc. And they're saying that if we have autonomy and we want to exercise our sovereignty, we should be able to have our own currency. The dynamics or the operationality of all of these things is very complex. It's not as simple as we think. But then when you get to research and read and discuss about these things, you find that well, the sovereignty of these African countries are not respected. Because each country, to carry out its development, must be able to print its own money. I read the other day in the situation happening in the US that, well, to support Ukraine with all the financial support in billions they are talking, and the difficulty of the difficulty in the American economy, what do? You simply print more bills. So if we cannot print our own money, in simple terms, you want to establish this studio and you do not have the money to do it. How are you going to develop it? You need to go and ask your boss to say that print me this amount of money in order to meet the value or the budget that you have.
But even when you have everything in your own backyard to be able to print that money.
Yes, you have this difficulty.
This takes us to the philosophy that there's a superior society within the world order also. There's a superior culture. There are people who are, what makes other people superior? Definitely, yes. We've heard that is the economy. Is it just about economy? It's
about what we are talking about, the principle of hegemony. Not so that there are bigger states and there are smaller states. The bigger state is what? Probably in terms of their army, in terms of their economy, in terms of their wealth, in terms of their technology, in terms of their history and all of that.
So where is the strength of Africa?
The strength of Africa lies in its population, in its resources, but then in terms of the global context, in terms of global positioning, authority, state authority, or power, the muscles of the speakers of the continent, in terms of relation to the other parts of the world. It's not there. I just said the current state of each country was a European creation. That you create a state, you have a head of state, you have the ministries, you have the different actors and institutions. It was all a European creation. It's a European model that most of the world is using. And if you look at even the United Nations as an instrument of the world order that we're going to come there, these were all European creation. At the end of the First World War and the Second World War, they created all these institutions, moving from the League of Nations to the United Nations.
Just consuming.
And they created, but you have to know that first, before the rest of the world were called or invited to come and join, 5 states sat and came up with the rules and how it will operate. And then, open it up, and then other members are being invited to come and to become members. And if you go to the Security Council, you have these 5 states who were the original creators, and they are the ones to implement the rules. And they put veto power so that if my interest is not in line with your interest, I veto what you are coming up with. Now, in terms of power of African states, if you are not a member of that council or of the Security Council, for example, you have no voice.
So, but how can Africa as a continent be able to valorize its own resources, its own, like we're talking human resources? The population is a plus. The natural resources is a plus. Now, we have intellectuals spread across the world who are doing incredibly well, even here in Africa. But the possibility of Africans building a stronger Africa is still an illusion. Where is the card?
I will not say it's still an illusion. It's in process.
Okay.
It's in process.
You're always very optimistic.
Yes, it does. You get me? It's in process. It's in work in progress. Now, much of this is about diplomacy and negotiations, building partnership with other countries and having support. You take, for example, you see during the Russia-Ukraine war, the African Union was able to lead a delegation to Ukraine to present their own proposal, to present a position of Africa that we think that for there to be peace in your country, because we are also affected by the war, this should be done and that should be done. How did they get to that? They were able to, garner support from Russia, which sits on the high table of international affairs. If it was just the African Union to get up 10 years before, they would not be able to do that. So in terms of diplomacy, it is how you build relationships with other countries and other regions and raise the stakes of your own importance, that you can be able to sit on the high chair. But then I'll give you a very simple example. In terms of power today in the world,
Right.
the most powerful nations are those that have nuclear weapons. That allows them to sit on the high table. Those who do not have nuclear weapons, they sit down there.
Means those ones who pose as a threat to others.
You get it. And so it's a leverage. That the nuclear weapons, the nuclear arsenal is sort of a leverage. That because I am more powerful than you, because I am in possession of this technology, if I say do something, you are bound to do it. Because if you do not do it, there's going to be a consequence.
It's a wall of threat. It's a wall of fear.
Good. The world is a beautiful place. But the world has always been a dangerous place and will continue to be a dangerous place. So, what you have that I do not have, there are different ways I can persuade you to give me what you have. I can plead with you. I can negotiate with you, or I can use force. In my dialect, it is explained with the concept of an egg, because what you have belongs to you, is yours,
Right.
but it's fragile. So if you have an egg in your hand, and I am in need of an egg, and I know that you have an egg, I will plead with you that please, can I have some? In the brotherhood of humanity, can you give me some egg? If you refuse, I will negotiate with you. That please, can I give you this which meets your needs so that you can also give me one? That's negotiation. If I am conscious that I'm more powerful than you, by whatever means, and I have tried these two methods and it doesn't work, I will use the third method, which is I will use force to take that egg from you. That's how the world operates. And much of these things, when you see leaders, they meet in some international conference and they are, drinking or embracing or laughing.
They're chatting within the corridors.
No, they are at war. They are negotiating, each one defending the interests of his country, and they are talking. As much as it can be simple, well-dressed, gentlemanly, no, sir. Some are receiving threatening words. These days we see it over the television. They're telling you in clear words, if you don't do this, we will do that. That's the way the world operates. That's why I say the world is a beautiful place. It's always been dangerous. It will always be dangerous. So the responsibilities of heads of states for African countries or those smaller countries, it's not an easy task. Because you may have an agenda you want to implement, and it is very difficult to implement it because there is a higher voice that may press you to say, this is a priority that we think may work. But then, how to navigate, the presidents have developed and understood how to navigate this relationship. Give and take, bring in diverse partners, and meet each one's interests. That's how the world functions.
So every state has to be thinking sharp because
you have to have a mastery of the rules of this game. You have to have a mastery of the rules of the operationality of the world.
Right, building on your nuclear weapons, you're building on your economy, because the nuclear weapons may not even have any use now.
Yes. But then it's your economy that may have use.
Like you said earlier, you see the need at the time.
You see the need at the time.
Whether these needs are good for the wartime or
for the peacetime
area.
That's what it is.
This is Africa.
Yes.
We are soon going, but this is Africa. This is Africa with plenty of resources, like I said earlier.
Yes.
Will you advise Africa to focus on what they already have, or now to import foreign technology to build its own arsenal so that it can defend itself when need be? Or do we look at agriculture, which is agriculture, and struggle to build our own economy with our natural resources, which has always been our bastion? Yeah,
no, that's what you're putting across is what we call globalization. Globalization is what? Globalization is the unprecedented interconnectedness of the world's culture and history and economics and politics and military.
Right.
That's what globalization basically is all about. Unprecedented interconnectedness of the world. in terms of culture, trade, economics, whatever. You have historical globalization, the interconnectedness between countries historically. English-speaking countries, African countries connected with English-speaking Western countries. Most English-speaking African countries are connected with Britain. Most French-speaking countries in Africa are connected with France. In terms of culture, it's the same thing. In terms of economics, that was developed by Emmanuel Wallenstein. You have a three-dimension of where you have the periphery, the semi-periphery, and the core. The interconnectedness is what? That the raw materials from the semi-periphery, like the developing countries, would go to the semi-periphery and to the core. And when they are transformed, and they are sent back to the developing countries. That's the economic connection. Technological globalization is what? The advance of technology that we can move. As for today, there's artificial intelligence. We've moved from the information culture to a very high speed rate of artificial intelligence today. In 1970, it took 9 hours to transport bananas from the ports in Chico to reach the Tilbury ports in London. 9 days, sorry, 9 days. Because it will leave the Chico port and cross to Limbe Victoria port and stop in Lagos and across the Atlantic Ocean right up to England. 9 days. But today, it is 6 hours from Douala International Airport to Heathrow. Because that technology has advanced unprecedentedly. Today, while you and I are talking here, conducting this discussion, is seen across the world instantaneously because of technology. Political or political-military technology is globalization is what? You know, political coherence and connection between countries. If you had the connection between Mali, Burkina Faso, or those countries of the Sahel with France because of terrorism, that was political-military globalization. You know, come together
for common good,
common good, planning, management to fight against terrorism. That's what the world. That's how the world is. You know, and so to come back to what we are saying, the primary purpose of our peace and development discourse is that Africa, as I said, is in the process, is to exploit these 5 aspects of globalization for the good of its continent. Each country in Africa to exploit it, have mastery of it, and make use of it. If it is economic, the globalization, get into cooperation agreements, partnerships with different countries, not tied to one particular region or one particular civilization. We have good historical relations with the Western world, but today we have to also look at what comes from Turkey, what comes from China, what comes from Russia, what comes from Latin America, what comes from India, and make use of whatever technology is there that can be applied to meet the specificity in our areas. Because it doesn't serve the purpose of just bringing this technology that will not meet the realities of our needs. That's respecting the specificity of our culture. I gave you the example of our textiles. We are using technology maybe from China, from Europe, to transform our textiles, not to produce suits, but to produce our loins and other African
reflectors.
Yes, you get it.
Doctor, so before we go, I want to look at Africa. In fact, let's come back to our own area.
Yes.
Our young people, as young learners, how much interest do they pay in this area of conflict, peace, development? Unlike many of us who want to study things that will give us quick money, or business oriented. This area of peace, conflict, development, governance. Do we have young learners who are really interested in this area?
They are. It's a very lucrative area. It's a very lucrative area in our university systems. You know, yesterday talking to those young people in Douala, I said, you must have a vision. You must have a vision. You must think long term. You must not go looking for opportunities in areas that are saturated. In Pan-African Institute for Development, we were the first to launch this training area in peace, governance, and development. You know, today you have the young man Gale who is running the same program with the Presbyterian Church University.
Nelson Gale.
Nelson Gale, yes.
Yes.
That's one of my very first products.
Okay.
You know, and you see the opportunities that are within this area. There is an explosion of non-governmental organizational activities all over the place. The expertise comes from this area. Governments need this area. The private sector needs this area. Because it's not only about politics. It's about maybe humanitarian action. It's maybe about governance. It's about creativity. It's about meeting a certain need. It's the need for peace. The peace concept is an industry. That's what I want to say. The peace concept is an industry. Exploit it. How do you exploit it? There are opportunities to operate in the peace industry. Create a non-governmental organization. Go and study and have the mastery of this area. In areas of humanitarian action, in areas of disaster risk management, in areas of providing counsel to maybe government ministers, and even interfaith, even in the church, interfaith approach to peace and conflict management.
Right.
You need this background. These are new areas of education and expertise. You know, these are areas of specialization that I will encourage young people to go there, and we have produced thousands of them.
Who are making impact.
It's in 2013 that we launched 2012 that we launched this program with my friend of blessed memory, Ndefru, Dr. Ndefru, here in Pedua, and other persons like Professor Ekongwe of UB. They joined us. Today UB has that program as well.
I see.
IRIC has. It's all over the place. But I came back to this country in, I think, 2007 with these notions and stuff, and I was attached to the University of Buea to defend my PhD. And while carrying out much of this research, you know, with the focus and with the training that you may have from England, and a lot of people call me a madman. People call me several ugly names. But you have to keep the focus. You must have your vision and believe in that vision. Is what I was trying to transfer to the youth yesterday. To tell them my story. To tell them where I have come from. Acquire knowledge is power. Build a network of relationships with persons. Believe in what you are doing, but let it be innovative. You know, and once you get to that level, you enjoy the monopoly of power because you are no longer afraid that you are going to seek for employment from somebody who may pay you or may not pay you. And the last word I told them there yesterday was that I am an entrepreneur. I am an academic entrepreneur. Okay. I sell knowledge. That's what I do for a living.
Okay. You sell knowledge.
I sell knowledge. That's what I do for a living. So even if I'm working in an organization or for something, I work with passion and no fear. Because if I'm not here today, I will be here immediately tomorrow.
Because you trust your expertise.
Because I trust my expertise. I have the capacity. I would move on. But in the process where most of our youths think they may depend on the government and make quick money, they are not thinking long term. Look at the young musician, Salatiel. I gave him an orientation for 30 minutes. And he's a superstar. He and Leo, I met them in that studio in St. Therese. At that very moment where the whole Buea and Cameroon and friends were calling me a madman, I spoke to those young people. 30 minutes orientation. They are superstars. That's where we are.
So it's not just about academics.
It's not
school setup. It's about developing.
All of these youths that we have running all over the place, it's not even about money. They need but orientation. They need somebody to talk to them. They need somebody to give. They've gone to school, acquired knowledge, but they need some people with exposure and experience to give them direction. That this is the kind of industry you can get into. There are different opportunities here. You can do this. You can tap into your skills. You can tap into your character and disposition. You can tap into your training. Go for personal development. Go and learn a little more. You must not read and become a doctor or professor like myself. Go for short-term training, acquire skills. I had some staffs here in Pan-Africa who, when they attended the first trainings I organized with Professor Kale in disaster risk management, he got another job and just resigned. He just came and told me, Prof, I'm resigning. I said, beautiful. If what we are doing provides
better opportunity.
A better opportunity, then I have done my job.
And that is what building self-development.
That's what self-development is. Capacity development, acquisition of skills, empowering these youths with inspirational stories, with examples. The late Pa Munangai, I would always sit with him and ask him. I said, I want to invite you to talk to the youth in my school. Just talk to them about your experience. Or like Pa Dr. Mignole, who just died. How many of these young people go and meet these old people and try to copy from their experience? How many of them go online to try and search, this person has astounding success, like Elumelu in Nigeria. What did he do? How did he get there? It could be a long process, but once you achieve these things, it happens.
Success starts following you instead.
It's extraordinary. I joined Pan-African Institute on the 1st of April 2013. In 9 months, I was promoted 6 times and rose right to the rank of deputy director. In my 10 years in Pan-African Institute, I've moved right up the ranks to today Inspector General, second to the Secretary General. Wow. It's your ability. It's your capacity. It's the way you do things, character. If you say you will do this, you do it. Acquisition of knowledge, continuous reading, research, asking questions, meeting people. But you have to choose the people you meet. I no longer make friends as I used to be. I used to be a very dynamic fellow, but I don't go out anymore necessarily.
You make friends now with what?
No. The doors that lead to nowhere, I close it.
All right, Doctor. I wanted us to end this interview by you just tell. You're also a publisher.
Yes.
As a doctor, you must have written.
Obviously, yes.
Maybe 1 or 2 of them.
Yes. If you go online, you will see some of this. You see some articles I've published there online, principally. Right. If you just Google my name, these things will come up. Okay. You will find one is sustaining peace, security, and development in Nigeria, Plateau State. Okay. You know, the multi-development model. You'll find that online. And that was basically a response to my advice to the then governor of Plateau State. So you can strike it there, you see it. It was done not with a very formidable publisher. That was Lambert. But then I have a current publication with Eurobooks. Eurobooks, which is understanding Cameroon before cultural history. Okay. That's with Eurobooks. And you'll have other articles in our journal. You'll have the impact of remittances on development.
You've equally written quite a number. You've attended many seminars.
You'll find them online.
Your biography is just too long for me to.
If you just tap online, you will see it.
Definitely. I really wish that every one of our viewers, if you can just Google Dr. Daniel Ekongwe. I think if you do that, you'll find quite a lot of interesting. You've addressed so many seminars across the world.
You'll find other lectures on YouTube. You'll find lots of lectures on YouTube. Or you can find me on LinkedIn or on Facebook. I don't use it that much. But on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, you'll find much of my materials there.
All right.
Or just Google the name Daniel Ekongwe.
So, Doctor, in fact, we want to thank you very much for sharing with us your ideas, your history, your perceptions, your philosophy, and given the fact that you are an academic don in this area of peace, security, governance, and development, you find our time to be here with us in the studio. We want to appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you very much. It was an honor and privilege being with you people today.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will have Doctor again, maybe some other time when we need your assistance. We hope that you'll be
all
here.
right. Okay, I will be ready.
That's how we saw it on today's edition of Mountain Echoes. I've been your host, JUDE MBAKU Munyo. Take the rendezvous for another edition will be yours on Monday. Good night.
Thank you.